At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
I'm doing everything I can. And stop calling me Shirley.
The center has to be at least 3 times bigger than this.
All right, it's another edition of Sincerely Unqualified. I'm Kevin. As always, we have Wini. Today we're breaking down Pineapple Express, one of, maybe it's up for a debate, but one of the best stoner movies of all time. So me and Wini, Wini and I, we're just in Denver, Colorado, around that area. But the great state of Colorado, had a great time, and we figured, you know what? Let's debrief. Let's watch a stoner movie because, they were one of the first ones to do it.
If not the first to do it. I don't know if that's actually true.
Who knows? I think maybe California, but
it might have been. It's a tie between California and Colorado. Yeah, we don't know who was first, but either way, both of them, paved the way. They did a great job. They did a great service to the American public. And,
for whatever reason, you think more of Colorado, though.
Absolutely.
I think it's just it was in the forefront more. California was just kind of always doing its own thing. But
that's why I think it was Colorado, because you think of them. They're almost synonymous with, recreational weed. You always think Colorado. So that's why I think they were first. And we have no idea. We didn't look up the regulations like when it came out. I feel like it was around the time this movie came out, honestly.
I think so. Yeah, because I think it was definitely, I feel like there was some recreational legalization at the time that it came out.
Yeah. There was definitely some stigma at the time too. And there still is. Yeah. There still is stigma around weed. In certain states, it's still, I would say more so in the South than anywhere. It's really just taken super harsh. But this movie really did, I feel like, change the way a lot of people thought about weed itself.
Yeah, I would agree. And like what you were saying with the South, that's what was funny about being there, because so now I've been living in California for a little, and then we were in Colorado where you can kind of tell there's not really a stigma. Like you're sure there is a little bit, but once it's recreationally legal for a little, I feel like that stigma slowly starts to go away.
Absolutely. Like the whole state, really nobody, especially when we were there, like I feel like 0 people would care at all were you to just be smoking on the street or just doing any of that. Whereas if you're doing that anywhere else, it's like, oh, what's wrong with that person?
Yeah, a crazy person.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, excuse me, sir. Where do you think you are?
That's what was funny about this movie, though, because, stoner movies absolutely are a thing. And generally, they're just, they are what they are. You're supposed to be stoned when you watch them just because you laugh at everything. So, honestly, I think we could go right into flick takes for this one, because in terms of stoner movies, I think that the thing you have to ask yourself when you watch this movie is it the best one, essentially. Like, I think it sets itself apart in a lot of different ways. And in my opinion, I think in terms of quality, especially of the movie itself, just like the way it's made, the convention, all that stuff, writing, I honestly don't think it's in the same ballpark.
Oh, no, it's definitely not, because we're coming from the genre that was defined by Cheech and Chong, and the genre that was defined by those kind of movies where the shock factor in it was that weed was involved. Right. So we're coming from movies where the general stigma and the general like, oh my gosh, they're pushing the boundaries here, was that weed was pictured in the movies and people were stoned during the movies. So for Cheech and Chong, the whole novelty of the movie is, oh, these guys are high the whole time. No way. Where now Seth Rogen and them take that and they run with it. And they're like, wait, why can't we just have a movie where people are high like normal people would be, but make it an action movie? So it's just taking that step of like that every genre needs of, here's the base, here's where we established ourselves, and here's how we're getting to the next level. Like it doesn't have to be pigeonholed to this the whole movie is you just getting high, and like you're high, you want to eat, you go to White Castle. Like, all right, great. Harold and Kumar is an amazing movie, but look, the whole movie is about them getting high, where that's just kind of a secondary aspect of Pineapple Express. Like, it's based around weed, but there's so much going on. You're like, oh yeah, they're high this whole fucking time.
Yeah, that's what's almost the most interesting thing about this movie to me, is because there is a lot of stuff that they do that almost makes it an action movie. It's clearly, far and away, it's a comedy. And that's why I really don't think, like I said, they're not in the same league, meaning like, obviously I think it's better, but I honestly don't even think they're the same kind of movies. Like, I think that this is an action comedy. I think that out of the, I guess, very few movies we already reviewed, honestly, The Other Guys, I would put these two kind of,
it's the closest to The Other Guys than any other movie, just because of the pure plot.
Just an action comedy. And I think that Rogen and Goldberg just have like this deep love for weed that I think that they basically wanted to make like an ode. It's like a ballad to weed. So like, let's center it around weed. Let's have the buddy aspect be someone and his drug dealer that actually have this good relationship.
Yeah.
But that's what I think is so interesting about it, that people put this and they like, look, the name of the movie is The Strain of the Weed. Like, there's no way around the fact that it can be looked at as a stoner comedy. But I think that it basically, I don't think you're looking at the movie the right way if you put them in the same ballpark.
Absolutely not. And it just, I mean, the being high thing almost takes a backseat to the action. Yeah. Whether it's based, I mean, it does such a great job of creating the relationships where it's like people who have smoked weed, people who have done this, done that, they know the feeling of like when you're staying there, you're just trying to buy something, and then it's like, oh, why don't you hang out? It's like, I feel like so many people have had that experience of like the dealer wants to be your friend, just wants you to hang out. You're like, I don't really know this dude, but sure. I just want to get in and out. And that was so great when the other guys walked in and he's just like, man, I hate lingerers. And then Seth Rogen's just like, all right, I'll just get out of your hair. He's like, nah, man, we got to kill this. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
So just the different vibes that it shows.
Especially with that, I think that's what makes the movie so relatable, because whether you have bought weed, whether you've smoked weed, anything like that, I don't think it really matters, because even like, as we said, as it's stigmatized, if you are someone that, you know, I would say most people know someone like this. Most people have come across stoners and had enough conversations with them that this concept is at least attainable. It's digestible for someone, and it hasn't been done correctly beforehand. Like, everyone knows this kind of relationship, whether it was directly or indirectly, and we just haven't really seen it in a really well-made movie up to this point. Honestly, I think that this is probably the best. This is for sure, and possibly the first. Yeah.
So that's what I love about what Seth Rogen does with movies too, when he writes. I mean, there's this aspect of reality that's in it that you don't get. I mean, even other movies that he's just been in, they're super bad that we always think about when it's your first time buying alcohol, you're trying to buy alcohol. Yeah. That takes this kind of relationship and moves it to the other side of the spectrum where it's the weed aspect. So it's like, here's all the nuances of trying to buy alcohol when you're 16, 17. Oh, also here's the nuances of being a modern day stoner. You know, I feel like it takes those real life experiences and shows them so well that we're like, oh shit, that we know a guy that's been like that. We know somebody who's done that. It's so cool that this was the first introduction of that being almost accepted in Hollywood. And, you know, accepted that you're allowed to make this, because there were still people who were very skeptical, like, how's this going to go over? Is this going to be okay to show in theaters? Like,
yeah. And 12 years later, I would say that it's still like, it's this taboo topic. A lot of people in that, I mean, now it's getting politicized too. So that's an entirely different subject. But I mean, 2008, 12 years ago, it was one of those things, I think, that like you were saying, Seth Rogen has such a knack for just making these things very relatable.
Yeah.
And whether that was you that you could relate to or someone you knew that you could relate to, it's one of those things that wasn't talked about and has not been talked about in Hollywood, but everyone's been there. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
It's kind of like, what are we doing here? So
Yeah.
they come in and make this movie that I honestly think it's less of a, and I already said this, it's less of a stoner movie. So, and I don't quite think as much of a nod to just pure, hey, weed should be legal. Like, obviously they're trying to make a statement throughout this whole movie.
Yeah.
And I think that them showing these guys, that's the other thing too, is, and you briefly mentioned it before, but when Seth Rogen is doing all these things and supposedly they're stoned, that you look at them and they're very functioning. Like, you can call them functioning high people because they're so used to it or whatever. But as much as I think that it's trying to make a statement saying like, hey, legalize weed, this is ridiculous, like people like it, whatever, I also think it's just anti-establishment in a way. So I think it's kind of less, hey, weed's awesome, more anti-establishment, just because obviously a lot of law stuff comes into play in the first scene specifically.
Yeah.
When the military is testing it.
The fact that Bill Hader is in the intro, which I mean, definitely makes a running for top scene in the movie, just on its own merit.
100%.
But that scene highlighting it, and I guarantee the weird thing about it is something similar probably happened. Let's be honest.
No,
something similar definitely happened. That was
for
like
sure.
that. Which is just hammering it in that that's not even 100 years ago that somebody was in a, I mean, obviously dramatized, but somebody's in a scuba suit lighting this. Can you imagine how absurd that is? Thinking about it now, this guy is in a full scuba suit with a tank and everything, and he has to go in and he's like, could you light me? And he's just standing back trying not to inhale the fumes, when now 100 years later all we know is that it makes you a little hungry and a little maybe more or less talkative, but just
more or less for sure. No, I mean, honestly, I bet it has something. I bet they were thinking about all the LSD experiments, and I think it was probably it's probably something on that, being like, hey, we did this, and now look how ridiculous it is. We're testing. We have Bill Hader down in a damn bunker. And it's like literally the first, and I think the reason I came to that conclusion is because the first thing that they say basically is, how do you feel about authority?
Yep.
He's just like, just telling him off or whatever, but that's like such an oddly specific question that I just think it's basically purely anti-establishment, especially because he has an 18-year-old girlfriend, so legal.
Yeah,
you know,
but so weird. Still so weird. So weird.
Super weird. That's like you're going to the line. You know? Let's say there's a hard line at not in high school, and he stepped a little below that, just legal, you know?
I'd say that's a very hard line. That the high school thing. It's one thing if you're in high school with the person, dating them, and then it goes beyond that. Yeah. Like if you're there together, maybe 1-2 years, and you're both in high school, yes. If you're 25, which like he is in the movie, and going to a high school and visiting, and you're just casually walking in, making out with her at the locker, and some teacher's like, hey, where's your visiting pass? You look like a substitute, and you're like, actually, this is my girlfriend.
Yeah, this is my girlfriend. He's just hanging out with her while she's in high school. That's honestly, that I really never look at movies critically at all, but if you were trying to be like what we said before, hey, there are stoners that are very functional and they're very productive, all this stuff. They even directly talk about it in the movie. It makes you look very immature and weird as a 25-year-old dating a high schooler. But they said, even, I think he says something along the lines of, I don't really do what society says I should do. You know, she's mature. I like her, all that stuff. So that's where I keep thinking.
So, but the thing about that gets me every time too, is he's like, she's mature, I'm mature, you know, it works. And then the second the other high schooler comes up and he goes, hey, like, that really made me laugh. She was like, that your impression
Jeff-
made me laugh. I almost pissed
you're
my
Jeff
pants.
Goldblum.
He goes, I wish. It's just looking at it from that lens. And even later he calls her, he's like, I miss you. And then she's like, I want to get married. He's like, whoa, this is insane.
I made a mistake.
Yep. So it's looking at it through that lens too of, you know, you have these people and it's saying, I'm mature, she's mature, this is great. And you realize like nobody is mature. Even the other high school teacher, big fan, Joe Latruglio, came up in another episode. Brooklyn Nine-Nine guy.
Yeah, we have like a little like Marvel Cinematic Universe going on with our podcast. And it's made up of Steve Coogan and Joe Latruglio.
And Joe Latruglio. Every movie has to have one of them. Joey Latrugs.
Let's make sure we got his name.
Joey
right,
Latrugs. Big
going.
Joey Latrugs. But he plays a teacher that everybody has in their high school, at least I think. I mean, I feel like if it's in this movie, it's common enough that it's either a throwaway joke or just, you know, common enough for it to be mentioned. The teacher who is always trying to be cool to like the popular kids or anything like that, just wants to get on their good side. And even after they left, he's like, yeah, man, Joey's a good kid. He's going to look after it at college. Trust me. He's going to, it's like, what is this guy doing? What?
Did you have one of those teachers? And one, did you get along with them? Or two, did you really dislike them?
I don't know if we definitely had one of them. We had people who were acted like they were still in high school 100%. Mm-hmm. We had teachers who were, you know, they were cool. They were like 26, but for them to have been 26 and acting like they were in high school, you know, you realize later what's going on there. You know, they're trying to still live in that moment, which was a little odd, I gotta say. Looking back now, because you have no idea. You're kind of blinded. You're like, this is such a cool teacher. Like, whoa, no way. They talk about what they did in high school. They say stuff. And then you look back now, you're like, that's really odd what they were doing.
It seems a little weird. I think especially the age we're at, that we're like now getting to those people's age. And also we know teachers, and now we're realizing that sometimes their teachers were hungover. And speaking of Pineapple Express, sometimes I bet teachers were stoned. We don't know. Maybe you hope not. Maybe you don't. But that's a reality. I mean, like
when there were some days your teachers were a little less energetic, a little more likely to, you know, give a pop quiz and not have you talk the whole class. Maybe they threw on a movie. They were definitely like a little bit hungover. You know, they had a little too much to drink the night before. Yeah. They went out on date night, you know, had fun.
They're people too, you know?
Exactly. They're allowed to have bad days at work. You know, we've had bad days at work where we come in. Yeah, exactly. Tie a little buzz on, come in, you know, they got the Gatorade. They're good.
I wish I really looked for that more. I wish I looked for like a sneaky Gatorade. Like, you got to assume that someone just sitting there. Oh, no, they probably did Propel. Put it in a water bottle.
Yep. Definitely but they didn't want you to know they were drinking the Propel. So they had
exactly. Got to put it in the water bottle.
But it got a little fizzy. You were like, either that's a mixie or that's Propel. Either one. God, do you think there were teachers ever that drank in school? Because I guarantee there are. I just don't know.
I think that there probably are, but I think, let's call it 75% because of debilitating alcoholism, and at some point it catches up with them. Like, I don't think that you go from drinking in school and getting away with it. I think
no, I don't see a very.
You might get through a semester. But then, you know,
really
spring rolls around.
College professor, on the other hand, feel like you can get away with that more.
You might be able to. I mean, you have to command more people. So I think there are more eyes on you. But I guess, you're less face to face.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thinking about, like, going back to the movie a little bit, thinking about college professors, too. So I took an architecture class my freshman year. And I knew it was a regret. It was supposed to be an elective, took an architecture class. But the references in this movie to civil engineers that James Franco just throws out all the fucking time that are so understated that you need to watch a couple of times to really pick up on it. I think that's one of the best parts of the movie. Is that
one of my favorite
so down.
One of my favorite lines that I know isn't going to come up later is when the one you mentioned before, when it's our first taste of them hanging out together, Rogan and Franco, and he's like, I think he's either rolling a joint or about to smoke a joint, and he throws out this really random architect's name, and he's like, my second favorite architect
That's
behind,
what
and
got
then
me.
inserts another one. It's like he says Madison Square Garden or something like.
Yeah, just so much vast knowledge of civil engineering.
But that's the funny thing too, is I don't know if it's just because let's be honest here, one of our friends, but that is something that I think makes it even more okay. We get this. This is very real, but no one talked about it. Like for some reason, stoners are just enthralled with that stuff. I think it's probably like things being built or things being made. It probably has something to do with that. But
definitely.
Well,
I feel that was it too, because he was like, "Hey man, stay over. We can look up some crazy shit on the internet." And I was like, you know how many times that probably happened where people were just sitting there and learned everything about civil engineering because they got high a couple times. Yeah. And they were like, let's look up this. Because you go down the rabbit hole. I've seen people go down the rabbit hole and then they end up being
We've lost a lot of good men to going down the rabbit hole when they were stoned.
Yeah, they've learned how to make like a ceviche in 3 days after smoking. It's ridiculous. I mean,
it wasn't good, but it was
very expected. Yeah. You can't learn that much from YouTube, but that was such a great little thing for it to happen throughout. And it's one of my lines later that actually has to do with it, but it was so good. I mean, I love
we'll save it.
That'll throw these character development kind of things in there. And that's too, like, his grandma wasn't written in the script, his bubby. Mm-hmm. She wasn't supposed to be in the script. And then James Franco was just like, that would be so fucking funny if a drug dealer had his bubby and was taking care of his bubby. I could, like, thinking about the scope of the character and being like, okay, he's got a grandma that he loves, who he's doing this all for, and also he wants to be a civil engineer.
Yeah. No, that's such a great little characterization nugget. I guess we flew into our facts section there, but did you want to get anything else out there with insights, any takes, or should we just move on to facts?
Okay, I'll throw one more take in there.
Get it in there. Okay. Come on.
We're going to throw one more in. So a lot of movies don't do this, which I think that they should, because it's number one, really funny, and number two, I feel like a rational thing that people would do. So all of like the death, the shooting, everything in this movie was always accompanied by like, ew, or that's gross, or oh shit, or something like
a James
that.
Franco. Ew.
Yeah. Like they have never seen that before, which in most action movies cases, they have never seen a dead body. They've never seen someone get shot, and they just breeze by it. But in this, like,
no, it's a really good point though.
It's just ew.
That's what grounds it. That's what makes them. It makes them a lot more likable. It makes them a lot more relatable. To just as simple as just being like, oh, gross.
Yeah,
like the dude's foot just got shot off with a shotgun.
Oh.
The top of his foot. For God's sakes,
Danny McBride just going, oh, gross. And he's the one who shot it off. He goes, oh, gross.
Exactly. It's like our friend slicing off part of his finger with a machete.
That was good. Yeah. No, just hold it above your head. Hold it above your head. You'll be fine.
Up the heart. Come on. No, honestly, I think that's a really good point. I think that we basically keep talking about the Rogan, the Apatow, that style or that knack for just knowing how to ground things and making things a lot more likable, a lot more relatable. Just be like, oh, what if he says ew?
Yeah.
What if,
and
you know? No, it's great.
It doesn't even have to be scripted. It doesn't even I feel like it's just a natural thing that I love when it comes out, because it takes you into the scenario with them almost, because you get transported there and you're like, that is gross. Who wouldn't think that's gross?
Yeah. Like if I was in that situation, I would. Oh.
Yeah. Even if if I shot somebody's foot off, I'd be like, oh my God, what did I just do? And it just, because you're like, none of them have ever been in this situation before where maybe Craig Robinson's character, those guys have, but otherwise it doesn't seem like, the main Danny McBride, James Franco, Seth Rogen, obviously Seth Rogen serving people every day, which in itself is amazing, that he's just got all these costumes in his car. Yeah, but Danny McBride's also just a dealer. Like they've never killed anybody.
No, yeah,
That
yeah,
we
just
know
like
of.
yeah. But I think that we could probably move into inexclusive
Yeah.
exclusives, our fact section, just going off what you were saying before with just talking about killing and whatever. Danny
A lot of
McBride,
killing.
yeah, there was a lot of killing. So, spoiler alert here: if you haven't seen the movie, maybe skip over this. I would say probably skip around a minute. But when Danny McBride in the end comes through we'll call it a barn or whatever, his hideout, he drives in out of nowhere, runs over Craig Robinson. The car was actually supposed to be a Ford Fiesta, which would have been great, but it was a Daewoo Lanos or something along those lines. That Ford literally just said, like, no, you're not using that. You can't run over someone with our car and say the name of the car in this stoner movie. Like, so I think it comes out so much better. He's like, you just got killed by a Daewoo Lanos, motherfucker.
It took me a little bit to
so much better.
Oh, then a Ford Focus? Absolutely. Yeah, I love that they threw that in there. And the fact that he had a Daewoo Lanos is great.
Yeah, it was a Ford Fiesta, which let's give him credit because that sounds pretty funny.
It does, but I feel like this made it way better. Because if it was a Ford Focus or Ford Fiesta, it would have just seemed like ad placement. It would have just been like, that kind of is, it takes away from what they're trying to do, which is make it very grounded, I feel like. And then if it was like, you just got mowed down by a Ford Fiesta, it's like, all right, just smile at the camera.
So true.
Yeah, like just look at the camera, wink, and say they gave us $5 million.
Around 2008, it would have been like, oh, I got to go play this game on my Sony PSP, my PlayStation Portable.
My PlayStation Portable. Marcus PSP.
Marcus PSP.
That was good. I mean, I'm glad it was a car because that's kind of like the Snickle Fritz thing where it's just a random name that you're like, what's good with that? But the Snickle Fritz actually was from something on set. It was from their effects supervisor who would say his second in command when he was doing something wrong, he was a Snickle Fritz.
A Snickle Fritz?
Yeah. So it was coming from that, which I thought was incredible. Just like you're Snickle Fritzing. And they were like, that's great. Wait. That should be the name of the weed, the shitty weed.
Yeah, we got to work that
the random guys. Yeah, like the Snickle Fritz.
So I feel like that has to be a Franco thing because I can just imagine Franco saying something was a Snickle Fritz.
Yeah. Which
okay, yeah. It was.
No, it was the FX guy. But they liked it so much when he said it that they just ran with it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
like,
you said that. Yeah.
So it was the FX supervisor, and he said it to his second in command. So he'd be like, "Stop being a Snickle Fritz," and they were like, "Whoa! Can you say that again?" He's like, "You're
and just
a
ran
Snickle
with
Fritz," and then it was like, "All right, that's the name of the shit weed. You got the Snickle Fritz." Because you go Pineapple Express, and he just pulls it out of the drawer. He's like, "He's getting the Snickle Fritz.
He's getting the Snickle Fritz."
Which you can't. I feel like there's no way to come up with Snickle Fritz organically unless it's from something like that. You've heard it, somebody calling somebody a Snickle Fritz. Like you're never just going to be like, we should name the shit weed Snickle Fritz.
No, absolutely not.
Come to your mind. So that was hilarious. That's just a little tidbit thrown in there. That was actually, a little bit of improv just taken from the set.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It wasn't in the script. I like that stuff. But speaking of weed, so they had this thing and it was in that original our first taste of them hanging out, and Franco Saul pulls out the cross joint, and it's supposed
iconic.
Yeah, they're so mind blown. It's the first time anyone's seen anything like it. So apparently, it's actually pretty hard to make. So no one on set could do it other than Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, like just the two stoners that love their weed.
Could.
So they rolled 100 joints, apparently, 100 cross joints, just because no one else could. Just for that one scene.
Have you seen the process to make a cross joint too?
I think back in the day I did.
Absurd. So those 100 for two people, like you have to. I think there's a video of Seth Rogen teaching Snoop Dogg how to roll a cross joint,
Oh, you know what? I think I saw
and
that. Yeah.
it's like a gem. But to make 100 of those, which they really did with just 2 people, so you have to roll a joint and then you have to like poke it with a pin, but you have to roll a really small 2-sided joint
Like a
as well.
smaller one.
Yeah, that fits through the pin poke. And if you really just mess up the pin poke or it's packed too tightly or something like that, it just rips. So you have to be like
Yeah, I guess
a
that makes
surgeon, which I think Seth Rogen is a surgeon in weed terms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I trust
with
him.
joints,
Yeah.
that dude's a surgeon. Yeah.
Oh,
for
absolutely. He'd be like, that's how he's so good at making pottery now, is he's just like, he's got the steady hand to make cross joints, and now he's just making vases.
Sure. Well, bongs.
Oh, he makes vases too.
Oh yeah.
And-
after the bongs.
Yeah. Well, the bong thing too is funny because that was, you remember when he got smashed over, when Danny McBride got smashed over the head with a bong?
Oh yeah, during that fight scene.
Yeah. During the
yeah.
scene. Okay, their fight scenes, first of all, got to give them credit because those were really, really good. Those were well done.
Comedy action movie, absolutely.
It didn't seem like they went on too long either, which is usually an issue in a lot of action movies. It's like, all right, what are they doing still? Like, just, you're not James Bond. Let's get out of this. But for them, it was really well done in the sense that they had a lot of things going on and a lot of funny stuff, like when Danny McBride's smashing James Franco in the nuts and then, he gets tackled. But the bong,
talk about that scene later.
So the bong, when James Franco smashes it over Danny McBride, in movies, they have breakaways. So it'll be like a breakaway bottle. It'll be a breakaway thing. I've seen them. Yeah, exactly. I've seen them before. They never hurt. It's basically like sugar kind of thing. It's a concentrate.
Yeah.
You just smash it. Doesn't hurt you. That's what that was supposed to be. But there was water in it when they smashed it over Danny McBride's head. So they said like he actually got hurt from that. So imagine getting smashed with took him a second to recover. Like that, it felt like something was actually hitting him with that.
Oh, that was like in the middle of the scene too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Can you imagine you think something's just gonna feel like nothing and you're just getting hit with 8 pounds of water on your back, just smashing into you? You're like, what the? And I mean, I don't know if they did multiple takes, but I think the take that they kept is the one with the water because the reaction is so genuine.
Yeah, you can't get a more genuine reaction than that happening. Yeah. So there's actually another one is along that same kind of line is so Franco's always wearing his headband kind of thing. Yeah, that was literally only to hide basically like a stitch on his face because during the scene when they were in the woods, he actually ran into something. He ran into a screw that was holding up one of the branches or something.
Oh, dude.
And cut himself and needed stitches. And then they used that headband to cover it up for continuity purposes.
That's wild. Wait, so and in the scene, he runs into a tree too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that. So during one of those takes, he hits his head and
he
gets
hit a
cut.
nail. That's insanity, dude. It does seem a little bit like the people on set were a little high at the time because there's a lot of things that go a little bit wrong where it's just like, oh, that could have been prevented. Like, oh, that bong had water in it. Shit, my bad.
That's a good point. It's a very good point.
It seems like usually there's a lot of lawyers involved with stunts and stuff. They're just like, shit, was there a nail in that tree?
Oh, that's probably honestly the same reason. So when they went to Sony to get their budget, Apatow and obviously all the creators, the finance people, they wanted 40 million, which honestly isn't that much. I mean, for a comedy, for what it is, maybe it's a little bit, but Sony basically went back and they were like, no, we can only give you 25 because it's this stoner movie. And I mean, if you want to talk about return on investment, the box office off a $25 million movie, I mean, it did so well.
That, I mean, it still gets watched to this day by people, coming. You get to a certain age, you watch Pineapple Express. It's like when you watch Superbad, it's like when you watch that. I feel like there's a certain, it's like a rite of passage almost now where I guess Sony didn't think it was going to be that back then because it was still such a controversial topic. Yeah. But it's become like its own cult following kind of thing. Not, I wouldn't say cult. I mean, almost cult. I mean,
Yeah.
there's such an intense love for this movie because if you love this movie, you're gonna want to show it to people, and those people, if they love it, are gonna want to show it to people. So I feel like there's a very deep appreciation for the movie itself.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. And honestly, I think that's why it did so well. So even opening weekend, it got around $23.2 million. So almost made back its budget and then proceeded to go on. Its worldwide box office was at 101.6 million. So
That's
you make 101.6 million, on 25 million budget when they wanted 40, and you were like, no.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
too much.
Some things happen like that. And then on the same vein, they were supposed to make a sequel, and people did want a sequel, which honestly, I won't rule it out. With all the policy that's happening around weed, I would not rule out Pineapple Express 2 still.
But I don't know if that's a good idea. I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like Seth Rogen and James Franco are people who are very honest about their work. You know, like they're not just gonna go grab at something just for the quick buck, because they've got such they've got such a hold of the zeitgeist of culture. Like they've both been in so many things. So they're not gonna just jump into a project if they don't genuinely like what it's doing. I
agree.
Like,
but
having said that, I don't think that they're rushing into it. I think if it's a great script, they have a great opportunity. They're not just going to make it, but
I don't know where they went in production with it, but Apatow did go back to Sony about the sequel, saying that they needed 50 million. Listen to this. Sony said, no, we'll give you 45. And Apatow just refused. He said, no, can't do it. Can't do it for anything less.
Maybe that was a blessing in disguise, honestly. Maybe it was.
I would honestly, I think so. I mean, granted, you never know. Some sequels will really surprise you. 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street.
Great,
was, pretty good.
I would say,
Pineapple Express 2, who knows? I mean, you hate when these movies are taken away from by a sequel flopping.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
but it's also
knows?
it was also such a great movie at its time. Like, it was
Right.
2008. The weed was on the cusp of being legalized. It was this, it was that. Yes, you could take it somewhere with the states that are legalized, it being recreational, it being this, it being that. But I feel like now that it's accepted in certain places, it does take away from that.
Yeah, I would agree.
But at the same time, it's still
there's-
an insanely good movie. So I'm not ruling it out either way,
Right.
especially with the guys behind it. I know they can make magic.
Absolutely. And that's where I think you just say, now that we're talking it through, if they did, I would be super excited. Like, it's this crew. So that's just something. And again, with Bo Rat 1, but our last not review, we'll call him breakdown. I mean, 16 years later, something happens, a pandemic breaks out, and we have this crazy election. So Sacha Baron Cohen says, okay, well, now that I'm thinking about it along these lines, I mean, this movie came out in 2008, which was an election year. I think at some point, if policy's lagging, maybe Rogen and Franco combine heads, make another stoner movie.
Just come on right out with another movie. Okay, wait. You want to know something crazy about the timing of it too? Just the craziness of the timing of this movie. So I forget the actor's name all the time who plays Ted Jones, the head drug dealer, the murderer, everything like that.
Oh, Gary Cole?
Yeah. So there was another person reading for that role. But this person was told that they weren't evil enough or scary enough to convince anyone that they were a drug dealer or drug lord. Now, I just want you to think about that for a second. And
Not
then
scary
realize that
to be a
not
drug
scary
dealer.
enough, not scary enough, not evil enough to be a drug dealer. And that person is Bryan Cranston.
The one who knocks.
Whose best role was an evil and scary drug dealer.
Still, I mean, like, redeemable. I think Bryan Cranston was at least redeemable. Ted Jones, I think, was just an asshole the whole time. So maybe different
Okay,
vibe, but I hear
but
what you're saying. That is very funny.
You know what would have been weird though too? I don't think that if Bryan Cranston took this role, he would have gotten the Heisenberg role in Breaking Bad.
That's fair.
I don't think that you can do both.
No, I would agree. I think that probably would have not a career ruiner because Bryan Cranston's been in a lot of great stuff.
I mean, he's Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, of course. But no, I think you're right. I think that I don't think you can be, because then you would be the bad guy from Pineapple Express.
Yeah, and the dad from Malcolm in the Middle instead of being like one of the most recognizable characters in television history.
Right. Yeah.
Probably one of the most insanely good characters in television history, but to have somebody say like you're not evil enough, you're not scary enough to be a drug dealer, and then go on and do that.
Honestly, crazy about, like, I even read the script. And speaking of the script, Seth Rogen actually wrote himself in as Saul, so Franco's character. But Apatow literally had to convince Rogen to let him do it. Like, Apatow brought it up to him, and Rogen was like, "Nah, I think I'm still going to do it." Then at a table read, Rogen was like, he's so damn good.
Yeah. I don't think you could. Weren't they friends at the time too? I feel like they've been friends for.
I think
did
Rogen
he
just really wanted to be the stoner, like, drug dealer, honestly.
Yeah. So I can't see that. I mean, honestly, I think James Franco did such a good job in that role that it's hard to see anybody else.
It's so weird. And granted, both of these people are great actors, so I think they both could have done each other's roles, but it's so crazy watching, knowing that, just because I think Rogen plays this, he has a job, but not really. He smokes weed, but like not crazy. Well, I guess he is high all the time. Yeah. But then, I mean, Franco's just this stupid, lovable, long-haired stoner drug dealer. They're so good in their own roles, especially with, I think Franco as Saul just works so well.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, there's an argument definitely for their roles being reversed, but then I think there's also the better argument of, I feel like they play closer to their own personalities and they play closer to their strengths.
Yeah, and I think that, honestly, I bet it was just Seth Rogen being involved in the production, just be like, no, this would be fun to play, so I want to play it.
Yeah.
And then,
definitely.
Obviously, he didn't make a big stink out of it. He saw him at the table read and was just like, yeah, no, let's do that.
Yeah, no, that's gonna work way better. And he's real and like very observant about his own work, and he really wants it to be the best that it can be. So he's not egotistical in the sense that he's like, I wrote this for me, I'm gonna play it. He sees the big picture enough where it's that person is way better than me, they're gonna play that role, which is really, really hard for people to do in general. I mean, whether it be in your job, in your life, I mean, even getting replaced in a position for sports, it's like, yeah, you want the team to win, and if they're better, but there's still that fact of like, I don't want that to happen.
Oh yeah, ego always gets in the way. I don't care who you are. Ego's going to get in the way at some point. But I mean, obviously, I think he could look at the role he was playing and be like, "This is still a great role. It's still going to be hilarious." Like, I mean, Rogen's great. He's also that's the lead.
That's why he's so great at what he does, is because he thinks like that, and he thought, "This is going to be a better movie if I do this." And he still got to play the lead, which is I wonder who was supposed to play, his role originally then.
So
if it was like a Paul Rudd,
but I think that they were actually just supposed to be reversed.
Really?
Could be wrong. Definitely could be wrong. Let me see.
I can definitely.
You go on to your next fact, and I'll come back to that.
Okay. Yeah. So then, basically, the next one has to do with the GOAT himself, Danny McBride. Mm-hmm. While filming this, in his amazing role, he's been in. Has he been in everything other than Borat we've talked about? No, he wasn't in the other guys.
He was not in the other guys.
Tropic Thunder, amazing.
There's a lot of them though.
But this one, I mean, so there was the scene when basically he broke his neck. I mean, he was the most injured character other than Craig Robinson. Everyone's just getting shot, stabbed, their necks broken. But when he's taped to the chair and they basically secure him, and he says the line like, "I'm gonna flex and get out of here," and just like does that and kind of just sticks.
Mhm.
He had to stay in that tape all day while filming because it was too intense, and basically for continuity and for time's sake, they couldn't undo it and then re-put him back into it and then undo it and put him back into it. So he had to stay in the tape all day. And they had to just tape him like that for the entire day of shooting.
Yeah, I mean, actors have to go through a lot, and like, I'm not saying that they have a hard job or anything. It's just like there are certain things like that they have to deal with. Maybe cold weather, heavy prosthetics, something like that.
Yeah.
But to sit down in a chair all day while you have duct tape to
Oh.
you sounds pretty brutal.
That's horrible. I mean, there's that, and I feel like that's comparable to like being outside in the cold all day. Because think about Leo filming The Revenant and being outside in the wilderness, and then think about being Danny McBride and having to sit like this with tape all over you all day, and it's almost like its own form of torture.
Honestly, yeah, that I think that would basically be torture.
Yeah, because at least in the cold, like if you're outside like Leo, there's people with cameras, there's people with tents, there's people with everything. There's people behind you who can warm you up. If you're
There's
Danny
some
McBride,
relief.
you're going, yeah, you're watching people go to the snack bar and stuff, and you're sitting there like, hey, can somebody bring me over a sandwich?
I mean, you gotta hope that he had someone looking out for him. Maybe bringing him some sandwiches.
Yeah, bringing him something at least, like help the guy out. He's got to be in all that dirt and makeup and fake blood all day, just taped to a chair. Like, can somebody get the guy some hors d'oeuvres?
Someone bring the man some bacon wrapped scallops, for God's sakes.
Did somebody get his goddamn devil eggs? Like, just bring him over already.
I'm still looking for this Saw thing, but
we can assume that it was flipped.
Yeah, I think it was. So why don't we just go ahead? We're gonna move on to line for line. We're gonna talk about our two favorite lines. Winnie, I'll let you go with your first two here.
Okay, all right. So one of them was from Craig Robinson. It's just because I love these characters so much that I think it's worth mentioning what he says. It's after he gets hit in the face with the coffee. He's like,
yeah,
he gets hit in the face with the coffee pot. It burns up his face.
Yeah.
And he's with the whole pot, and the glass breaks on his face.
Mm-hmm.
It cuts to later when they're in the warehouse, and he's describing it, and he's just standing there with a straight face, and he goes, "I look like the Hamburglar and the Elephant Man." And I was just, there's a Hamburglar scar on the side of the Elephant Man. Yeah, and I just thought that was so good. And Craig Robinson throughout was amazing. Just, I mean, his delivery and his lines are unmatched. So for him to just be like, I bet that was improv too. For him to just be like, I look like the Elephant Man and the Hamburglar.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's one of the great improvisers. That line itself is just hilarious. Delivery's on point, all that. What's your second one?
Oh, you want to go 1, 2? All right.
Yeah,
so
sure. Let's go 1, 2.
All right. So my second one is from Franco. It's in line with his civil engineer kind of stuff. And it's when they're talking, they got in an argument, they're throwing facts back at one another. He's like, what are you going to do? Oh, you're just sell drugs, blah, blah, blah. And James Franco goes, I'm going to be a civil engineer, design septic tanks for playgrounds. Kids can take a shit.
Kids can take a shit. So like his whole drive for being a civil engineer isn't to build buildings, it's to build septic tanks for kids' playgrounds.
Kids' playgrounds take a shit off.
Such a funny reveal, because I don't think they outwardly talked about his want to be a civil engineer up until that point. It was just like the odds, like that guy knows a lot about civil engineers.
Yeah,
we're doing
my plan was to become a civil engineer and move Bubby out. It's just like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense than just knowing about random civil engineering facts.
Shits on Seth Rogen for wanting to be a AM radio host, which it now is like 12 years later, just a podcaster. So everyone,
yeah, exactly.
Apparently, if it was 2008, everyone would have wanted to be an AM radio host. Which honestly, I've thought about how funny that was. That kind of does seem like a stoner thing. So like if you're in your car a lot for whatever reason, like smoking weed, you would listen to AM radio. and I'm not a stoner and I'm not in my car a lot, but I've since went from listening to music to listening to podcasts all the time. So I wonder if I would have been a huge AM radio guy.
I feel like we know some people who would throw on the AM radio and just sit there and basically act like they're a part of the conversation and just be like, no, you're wrong.
You talking about me?
No. I'm talking about some people that we are aware of that exist. Just people in the car just be like, no, you're wrong.
Oh yeah, I know the voice you're doing. But I don't even know if it has to be actually that probably has to be a stoner thing.
I feel like putting yourself in the conversation. I feel like you can get very lost in a podcast too. It's very easy to get kind of, because I even do it, like just listening during work or anything. You just kind of get lost and you just go with the flow and listen, rather than music where it can be one song and then vibe change and then one song and then like, oh, something else comes on.
Yeah, for sure.
Snap
Two of mine, I really like when so it's not from that same scene, but it's the scene that I've already mentioned a few times. When they first really hang out, he goes to buy weed from him, just hanging out, and he talks about his bubby or Bubba or whatever, and he's like, "Hey, would you ever, or do you know anything about euthanasia?" He's like, "For your grandma," and he's like, "No." And then it kind of just proceeds on. And then my favorite one is when Seth Rogen just goes, "Oh, I could talk about euthanasia all day. Don't get me started."
And they pan over to the photo of him and his grandma, and he's just like arm around her. You know,
like just trying to get out of there by saying I could talk about euthanasia all day. That one's so good. And then we mentioned it before too.
Yep.
Freaking Bill Hader in the beginning.
The GOAT returns. Yeah.
Yeah. White and Black, the Sincerely Unqualified cinematic universe. Our guy Bill Hader in I think everything other than you can't include Borat. Yeah. But the he's in the beginning, he's just like doing his thing, he's smoking, he's like like fake drumming, just saying all this random stuff. He's like, I feel like a slice of butter melting on a big old pile of flapjacks. Just like literally saying like, hey, this is a fun feeling, all this stuff, but like between him, like, hey, fuck just you.
That and the improv ragtime for me does it. It's just like, that line, what do you think about authority? We should give this to everyone, man. Just make Section 9 legal. Come on. It's so good.
Yeah, that like the most direct anti-man commentary.
Yeah,
that starts out the whole mood of the movie, I would say.
Hey, where are we going? What are you guys doing? Oh, you got a gun.
Freaking scuba people. Let's move on to scene for scene. So we talked about the scene a lot. My favorite one has to be the fight scene when you mentioned the fact where they break the bong over him, just because it's this whole thing. It's not like Tropic Thunder in that has legitimate action scenes, not like the other guys, which also is pretty legitimate. I think this one's more based in comedy.
Absolutely.
It's so funny that Seth Rogen breaks the top of the toilet over his head. Head, Danny McBride. And then they're Seth Rogen literally is laying on top of him with a door that he breaks down in the bathroom. James Franco's jumping up and down on the phone. And then Danny McBride goes, all right, time out. Time in. And just gets him off. Like, it's so funny being good. Like, that's another thing. It kind of roots it in reality in a way that, if I don't know how I would react if I found myself in the situation, but if like it was someone that I supposedly knew and they said time out, I'd be like, oh, okay, we're stopping. And
exactly.
Time in.
Even so like throwing the ashtray at his head, he goes, oh, what the fuck, man. Throwing the ashtray. And I feel like it's got roots where the other movies we watched have roots in real action. This one is more Three Stooges vibe, where it's just like constantly going and just fighting with each other with whatever they have, and just that familiarity of, like James Franco in the bathtub just doing everything. And then I feel like that's how almost you would fight with your friends versus fighting against somebody you hate.
Oh, exactly. Because they're the buddies in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
After all, this is a buddy movie. But what's your favorite scene?
So my favorite scene is when he shows up for dinner looking like a crackhead, where he just shows up late.
Oh yeah.
And so the entire scene in itself, whether it was him showing up late, the dad having a beer and milk on the table next to each other and drinking both, which was just absurd to me.
Freaking combo. Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's like, if he doesn't get here, I'm gonna take my food, go in the other room. I'm gonna read some emails. I'm done with this shit.
Some emails.
Yeah, just
for some reason that reminds me of the Will Ferrell SNL skit that I drive a Dodge Stratus. Like, I'm gonna read some emails.
I'm gonna read some emails. And then he goes to that. He's like, I'm gonna go get my gun if you don't get out of here. James Franco comes in. She stabs him with a fork.
Oh, it's like a fork with like spaghetti sauce on it or something.
Yeah,
like
it's just
fork.
like he's like, no, he's my drug dealer. He's a good one.
He's a
like
good
drug
one.
dealer. Then to have Craig Robinson come in with the other guy, put his hands in the food, like he submerges his hands in the food, in the corn and the mashed potatoes, and goes,
"Oh,
it's still warm." Like just shoved your hands in the food, and then when they're leaving and getting in the car, they're like, "Why were you coming? Like, get out of my car. Why would you think that's an option?"
He's like, "No, that makes sense. That makes sense."
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That whole
he
scene
says
itself.
to go to the motel and cite as the garage lease or something, and the dad just
Yeah.
goes, "Fuck off, loser."
Yeah, he goes, "Fuck up." He goes, "Sally, I love you, but you're a goddamn idiot."
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of the better characters. But if we move on to character for character here, what a great name for a segment. What's yours?
Craig Robinson, through and through.
Craig Robinson.
Just everything. Okay, so his character, I thought, just wanted to be liked throughout. Like, I felt like there was a hard, even when his partner was just like, I'm going to go home tonight and get dinner with my wife. And he's like, why, man? Like, why? Every time, why? He wanted to be liked. When he was on the phone with the boss and Craig Robinson smoking, the other guy's like, yeah, boss, we're here. He goes, I'm also here. Like, he's just like, I'm here too. Don't forget that. I know. And then, I mean, he gets hit with the coffee pot. It's not his fault. I mean, he just had so much anger built out throughout and then gets hit by a car, which is very unfortunate. But I feel like as much as he was supposed to be the antagonist, you can't not like him.
No. I mean, and that's the funny thing. He's a very likable antagonist, which you gotta love those types of characters. He's done so well because, I mean, Craig Robinson's such a lovable guy.
I know. Like, even when he's gonna kill James Franco, you're still like, all right, do your thing. Like, that's understandable. You've been through a lot today.
We get it. We get it.
Yeah, we've been there. We've gone through some shit.
What a tool to make him like have remorse is just getting hit in the face with a coffee pot with boiling hot coffee.
With boiling coffee, just having that weird scar down his face. Who's your character? Who's your number one?
So I'm gonna cheat here a little. I'm gonna say 3, but just because this is something I forgot to bring up during facts. So I'm gonna say Ken Jeong and Bobby Lee, because I don't know if you even realize this.
Yep. They were in the car.
Yeah. The whole thing about they say the Asians are the like the rival gang or something, and they even poke fun at it there. He's like, well, Indians are technically Asians, and then Danny McBride's like, no, like Korean or Chinese or something. So it's something that I've heard Bobby Lee talk about a lot, and he was just like, that's literally before all you could get cast at is just like Chinese or Asian people. And so Ken Jeong has more of a role, but when they're originally scoping it out, I heard Bobby Lee's voice saying "No escape, no surrender" or something, like something with "no surrender." It's like, is that fucking Bobby Lee? Turns out to be Bobby Lee,
dude. That's so funny. I didn't know Bobby Lee was in it. I saw Ken Jeong. I didn't know if Bobby Lee was in it, but I was thinking about when Bobby Lee was talking about how all of the same, like you would see all the same Korean dudes, all the same everybody going for those roles.
Yeah, you
So
always
he was
hear him
like,
talk
all
about
of
a
those
joke.
guys are in the room. So he does that joke, and then to actually see it, it's crazy. Like him
Yeah.
and Ken Jeong are in the same. I mean,
In the
that's
most like Ken Jeong, you can debate has like a decent role. Like, I mean, he's the one in the
Yeah.
end that like blows everything up, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but Bobby Lee in the most minor role you could imagine. Just hearing that is so interesting. But so
great.
my actual favorite character is the hot high schooler that does a good Jeff Goldblum impression. I mean, he's super dreamy. He's 18, okay?
He's 18.
So I think we're gonna get wrapped up here.
That was it? No. We need to explore that more.
No, that's my favorite character.
Okay,
I
good.
have
Yeah,
to
no.
believe he does a great Jeff Goldblum impression. And you know
I
what?
would love to hear it. I need to hear it.
Yeah, I'm mad that we're not going to get the sequel just because
know.
I have to assume that it would start out with, you know what? I'm going to speak it into existence on this podcast.
Mhm.
I think there's so much policy happening. We need a Pineapple Express 2, and I want the opening scene to be that dude doing a Jeff Goldblum impression.
Oh my God. Wait, you know what he needs to do? That guy needs to be either a legislator now who is in the office and they need to go to him for something to get approval, and he does the Jeff Goldblum to them to say no.
Oh, he like
Like he's a legislator.
Joe Latruglio's place too, or he's
Yeah.
yeah.
So he's like a legislator and they have to go to him to make weed recreational or something. And they go and he's like, actually, it's not going to happen. Like he does the Jeff Goldblum to them. He's like, you took my girl, remember? Like something like that. That would be unreal. He does the Jeff Goldblum and they're like, oh, it is pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that'd be good. But hey, I think we'll wrap up here. If you are new with us and you like the podcast, help us out. Like, rate, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Make sure to follow us on social. The links will be in the description and all that. Other than that, I'm Kevin.
I'm Winnie.
We'll see you at the next episode.
You gotta love Jeff Goldblum.
Go Jeff Goldblum.